Hey everyone, I'm Chris, and I'm joined here with Ryan. And today we want to talk to you a little bit about the sales process and some of the technology steps that you might come upon at the beginning of your journey as a development into the distribution space. We find that people, when they start their business and they get really excited because they start to be able to get some traction and get some sales, and then they start to grow their company, and there's a lot of steps that they go through along the way. And a lot of, quite frankly, stumbling blocks because of a little bit of lack of knowledge at the beginning of what are the technological steps that they have to go from being kind of a smaller mom and pop all the way through to your enterprise in your fast growing companies. So with that in mind, Ryan, what are some of the key things that we might want to discuss related to those topics?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about quite a few different topics today that will help you then frame where you believe you're at from a maturity standpoint and what type of technology you actually are utilizing, where there could be some gaps, where you might be able to innovate. So, but I think the most important piece in doing this type of analysis and thinking about this is you just have to be honest with yourself and with where you're at and where your team's really at. Otherwise, of course, you're not going to get anything out of this. So, I guess just to start, why don't we start in talking about, companies that might be at a low maturity to developing stage. What type of technology are those companies adopting, or where are they starting, and what might be their first step into technology adoption in the sales process?
It's a great question. So, normally what we find is right at the beginning when a company is first getting started, what they're really thinking about is the product or the service that they're selling and focusing on getting that product out to the market. So what comes to mind is they're doing the things like the buy sell, and they're trying to buy low, sell high. And when they're setting up systems for that, the main thing that they're doing is making phone calls. They're doing a lot of paper-based processes, a lot of stuff initially over email, and that's when they start to kind of get over their head. As soon as they start to do any kind of volume at all, now you're starting to get into things like spreadsheets, trying to keep track of where all of your products are. Sometimes in the early stages, you do a lot of what we call drop shipping. You don't actually hold the product, but you're essentially selling on behalf of others. You don't have to keep track of the inventory as much. But as the business starts growing, you start bringing that product into your building, it gets to be really challenging because now you have to start understanding where is that product at in your building? How much of it do you have? Are you ready to, are you following all the quantities that are needed for your customers? And so at the very beginning, we notice a lot of use of spreadsheets. You'll have spreadsheets for this, spreadsheets for that, and it's like spreadsheet city. And then none of the spreadsheets talk to each other, so things are out of date and things are falling through the cracks, and yet you're still making money. You're still, hopefully buying high, selling low. And you've got some margin built in, and so everyone's happy because dollars are flowing. But we start to run into some big challenges as it relates to the scalability of that. We also start to run into some challenges as it relates to other things, like, for example, how much tax am I supposed to pay? Do I need to be collecting and paying anything like a sales tax or any other regulatory taxes? Do I have income tax prep that I need to be working on? And so some of the challenges that people will get into is they'll start, I need to start tracking my accounting. I need to start looking at how I can know how much money I owe my vendors, how much money am I owed by my customers. And you layer by layer by layer, you start getting involved in not only a tremendous number of data flows that are out there, but the ability to keep that up to date. And the one thing is it's really easy if you're a one-man band, right? Because you then know everything, and you're the center point of truth and so forth. But
if you don't fill out the spreadsheet, it's all right here.
Exactly right.
So you got everything that you need.
Exactly right. And if you don't have anyone else involved, then there's nothing, there's no communication hurdles. But, you start to scale that company up. Now you add a second person, you add a third person, you start to get, 5, 10 people on your team. How are you going to keep track of the information flows to make sure that people that you're being accountable to your customers, that your employees and associates are being accountable to the goals of the organization? So what we start to run into in those early stages is they start to run into a lot of growth hurdles around the sharing of the technology involved. If it's all in spreadsheets, then how do you give access to people to those spreadsheets? How do you make sure that they're not making mistakes and, deleting and adding the wrong information and so forth?
Do salespeople know how to use Excel?
That's a great question too, right? It's like at the very beginning, we've gone into a lot of companies where you'll see you've got paper call sheets. The salespeople will be like, okay, these are my customers, and then we'll go and we'll pull those and we'll look at him and we'll look at another person in the company, and hey, do you guys know that you have like 5 or 10 of the same customers on your sheet? And they don't even realize this. They're just dialing down. And so, you get that occasional customer that you reach out to, and the customer will say, hey, I just talked to, Sally, who called in just a little bit ago. John, but thanks for the call. Thanks for reaching out to me. And you're like, oh my gosh, so that at that very beginning stage, you really start to feel super disorganized. But then, what about as the company is growing into kind of that middle part of their journey? What happens? Do things start to change from there? What are some of the things that we see that change?
So as companies are starting to change, they're starting to, they're looking for technology tools, systems that they can start to use. And it's probably a little bit pre them, integrating all their systems together. That's more of an advanced leading edge stage, but they're going to start to utilize a couple specific tools. So for instance, they might adopt CRM. You have sales teams that are trying to figure out, to your point a second ago, who are they calling? How are we making sure that, we're each calling our own leads? How do we understand, the goals and KPIs that have been set forth? How do we know if we're achieving those? If we're hitting our sales goals, if we're making the calls we're supposed to make, if we're making the visits that we're supposed to make? And, when you break it down and you look at it from a dollars and cents standpoint, management's going to look at what's happening and say, on average, it's about $308 per outside sales visit, $50 per call that an inside team's going to make.
Wow.
That racks up quickly. And when you break it down and you look at it that way, companies are starting to think, all right, I want to make sure that my team, they're making the right visits, spending that money wisely, they're making the right calls, spending the money wisely. So having those types of tools is going to, increase the productivity. It's going to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck. There's a statistic out there that, 82% of high performing sales teams have a formal sales process for how they track performance, track their goals, track their KPIs. What gets measured gets improved. And it's not that sales teams, want this, big brother type of experience where they feel like somebody's watching everything that they do and they feel like they're doing double data entry all the time or wasting their time and they're not selling. You need to find tools that are going to help them, be able to track these types of goals without having so much manual effort. And so that's what gets you away from the spreadsheets, right? It gets you away from the Friday or Monday morning meeting when everyone goes in, and the only way that they know whether or not they're on track is when they look at the whiteboard, and Johnny goes up and updates all the statistics, from last week and where people are at.
And usually it's like once a week or once a month. It's way too late.
Exactly.
They're not getting enough information, in real time. So it's a big struggle to actually understand, what was the outcome that I achieved today? What was the outcome that I need to achieve tomorrow? You can be halfway through the month and you're not on track, but you don't know that because the system's not up to date and there's no way to find that information out.
And your top performers, they want the information. They want to know where they stand. They want to know that they're hitting the goals, the KPIs that are set forth. So, and at the end of the day, they know that if they achieve those things, they're going to make more money. So they will do them if there's easy ways that are set out there for them to be tracked and for them to be managed. So, that's one of the areas where companies will start to look at, some early tech adoption is to just help from a time management, help people, manage their day and, get the team on the same page, right?
So speaking about tracking things, one of the things that we see a lot, we were talking about the paper lead sheets earlier, where people will call down, literally on paper lists, which we see a lot. We still see that actually when we go into new companies. So if somebody's on paper right now and, maybe they're even moving over into a spreadsheet, what are some things that they can be thinking about in terms of how to manage a lot more leads? And, do they need to put assignments on the leads? Like what would be some ways that they can look at managing the leads a little bit more methodically so that they, is there anything they can do to avoid people stepping on each other's toes? Mm-hmm. And how would they go about making sure that they're even covering all those leads?
Well, I'm glad you asked. There are a lot of lead management tools out there that will take thousands of leads. That's one of the challenges, right? I mean, you just mentioned it, that a lot of the sales team members, they have They might have 200-300 leads that have been assigned to them. And management knows that it's very unlikely that they're going to touch all of these, right? But you bought a huge list, right? Let's get the leads out there. Let's get everybody involved, and it's okay if we give them too many, but you need some kind of a process in place and some type of a tool that's going to help the sales team and all their members understand, okay, my goal is it's going to take me 8 to 12 touch points to break through with this with any of these prospects on this list.
8 to 12. So do you think
12.
that anyone actually knows that they need to reach out?
I don't think they have any idea.
Times?
I don't think
how
that
many
they
times
know.
do we go in there and we see that somebody calls someone, one time, they reschedule, they have a follow-up, and then like on the fourth call, they're like, this guy's not interested.
Nobody schedules follow-ups on leads. If your sales team tells you they do, they're lying to you. It's just not happening, right? So if you have something in place that will tell the sales rep that, hey, you called this person, last week Thursday, they're due for a call again. You want to call this person once a week for the next 8 weeks and make sure that and try and hit at least that 8 call rule here to try and break through. So you need something that's going to help
that
govern
was interesting. You said due for a call. I think that's really interesting because we talk to a lot of companies, and what we find out a lot is that we'll say, well, what's your process of going about doing your follow-ups for your leads? How do you know that you need to place another call? And they'll say, what do you mean? Well, I call these times of the day. I'm like, no, you don't understand. If you've got, let's say, 200 leads, how do you know who to call next out of that batch? And let's say, well, I schedule my calls, and then we'll say things like, well, on what kind of a cycle are you doing that? And honestly, what I find a lot of times happens is they take, a little bit of time during the week and they schedule it for prospecting, and they literally just call down the same list again, almost in the same order, almost at the same times of day, without a lot of thought on, how many times they've attempted each one,
right?
Where are they at in the cycle for each one? Have they had previous conversations with them?
Right.
It's something that it's like a lesson of frustration. If something comes to the surface and pops up and becomes a customer, then it's great. But if it's still in the lead list, I'll kind of get to it later, and it's not really a methodical process at all. So that's one of the big differences that I think that we've seen is when you get in there and you start establishing a pattern that you expect, and when you're going to be doing those follow-ups, and how often you're going to do those follow-ups, and what mechanism. Like, is it going to be a call? Is it going to be an email this time? You're going to reach out on LinkedIn. What are some of the other ways that you can reach out to these folks? And put a better process in place to do those follow-ups, and then you start to see a different, type of result, don't you?
Right, and there's also tools for sales managers to be able to look at the type of lead and make sure that the type of lead that's getting dispersed to the team, that it's going to the right team member. Right. You might have some team members that are really strong at selling certain categories, certain customer types, right? So you want to make sure that those leads are going to the right person. You don't want somebody who's never made a sale in that category getting leads that's just going to be a futile effort there trying to break through. So it's definitely another way in which you can optimize that.
All right. So talking about leads, we kind of covered that you need to have a process and hopefully some sort of way of automating some of those steps and giving those leads out to your team and having a way to manage all of that. What about the information that they can put on file within that account? Like, what would you expect? Let's say you're a sales manager. What would you expect to see if you go into a customer account, that's being worked right now or prospected? What would you expect to see in the system?
Well, I'd expect to see regular notes, right? On any time that I have some type of a conversation or, any time that you have a visit, there should be some type of a note taken on what was talked about. There should be notes in there on, new types of product that this customer might be interested in. There should be notes on, potentially what the customer's goals are for the year. I mean, depending on what industry you're in, for example, if you're a territory manager in the HVAC space, you work directly with a smaller group of customers that you're aligned in helping them achieve their goals for the year. So, being able to go in and understand, all right, I clearly get what this customer, what their goals are, what they buy, what products we should be looking at trying to pitch them next. A lot of different opportunities should be there. And all of that needs to be there because if that sales rep were to leave and walk out the door, then all that knowledge walks right out the door with them, right? And a lot of times, put yourself in the customer's shoes, right? How frustrating is it if you're the customer and you've built this relationship with your sales rep where they become this great resource, they understand your goals, they know exactly what you buy, when you buy it, they have all this information, and they're great at working your account and being a good resource. And if that person leaves and the person that they plug in has no clue as to what you typically buy, what they might bring up products that you've said, I will never buy this. Don't ever bring this up. They come in and somebody pitches you product that you've never bought before that you have no intention of ever buying. It's a frustrating customer experience, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that should be there.
There's an
and it's really
expectation
important
that
that it's there.
The company has to know the customer, not just the individual, right?
Correct. Right.
And that's really critical. We find too that there's some other ways that some of this can be automated. You look at, for example, your phone systems, your email systems. I mean, to the extent that those things can be tied in, you can see things like your last call to the customer. You can see the call history. You can see the email history. These days, it's really popular sometimes with texting, SMS messaging.
Right.
All of that being kind of on system as opposed to separate. It's really funny, again, when we walk into some of those companies and you see the paper phone list and then you see that they're using their cell phones and then they're texting and then you're kind of wondering, like, are they calling home? Are they calling their family?
Right.
Or are they actually working?
Right.
You're not really sure, but none of that data is on my system. That's all I know, right? I'm not getting any of that information. And so you're missing out on, the call history, you're missing out on the notes, you're missing out on, and the sales rep doesn't mind that sometimes. And that's the thing that can be somewhat frustrating is, initially, they're very short-sighted. They're all about building the relationship, and they're trying to remember everything. But in quantity, when you've got 100, 200, 300 different, whether it be accounts and prospects that you're doing, very, very difficult for anyone that's not a savant to, keep track of all that detail in their head. And even if they could, the company doesn't benefit from that. And it's the company that really owns the relationship, right? So they're trying to put a good steward of that relationship in place, but in order for the company to own that relationship and kind of maintain that relationship, all of that information has to be, as much of it as possible. But hopefully without making it too cumbersome, right, for that sales rep to have that expectation. So some of the things I've seen where a company will be able to put some things in place that helps the sales rep is, set up an expectation for how many calls they're doing. Set up an expectation for how many notes are they recording. Set up in addition to things like the sales and the profitability and things like that you typically expect some of the behaviors that are leading indicators of success and have a way to track those behaviors so that you can understand that they're actually achieving those targets. And then the sales team wants to help you hit those targets. They want to see progress bars and meters going across as they're doing their job. It helps gamify the things that they have to do. So it actually makes their job a little bit more fun because it can be mundane sometimes.
Right. When you do all those things, the sales usually take care of themselves anyways. Right.
Exactly. So how does then the sales team work with other departments? We've seen, for example, one thing that I've seen is during a customer onboarding, sometimes they have to go through a whole life cycle of, credit, regulatory checks, compliance, background checks, things like this before they're going to turn into account. Are they going to get a credit limit? Are they going to, what are their credit terms going to be? Those kind of things. And there's some steps that have to be done. So what can a sales team do to work with other departments at the company that would maybe ease some of the, administrative burdens? And are there any other departments within the company that sales can be thinking about, doing those kind of things with?
So customer service, being integrated with the sales team and sales process is really important. Of course, you're going to have customers that are going to call in, that are going to deal with your customer service team. And it's really important for that team to be able to communicate well with the sales team so that they understand, what the customer called for, if there's any follow-ups that are required. And having an easy way for them to communicate, leave notes in a shared space, right? Probably not on paper that they put on the person's desk that they might never see, but in some kind of a system where they can have a shared repository where all the notes can be taken. Someone can actively schedule a follow-up for the sales representative that's working with that account. Those are key. And then same on the marketing side, right? Sales and marketing need to be very aligned in terms of what type of promotional materials going out, what type of sales tools does the team need to then go out and sell. So alignment from those two teams is critical, making sure that the messaging is in line, right? That there's a lot of different things that those teams should really be working together on a daily basis.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, kind of going back to some of the different levels that we see, early stage companies, what we notice is that, in some cases, in addition to not having specific people that do each of those different tasks, when they do, we find that they rarely work together cohesively, and then they rarely work, on any type of a system or any type of a centralized way to do that. One example that we see a lot is very common is you'll have an email list where marketing will be putting together, some messaging they're going to send out to the customer, and as opposed to doing something kind of very specific and tailored for each account, because that takes a long time, they will go ahead and prepare things like a special sheet. Hey, these are the sales and the promotions that we have going on right now. Hey guys, here's the sheet that you can share out to your customers. And what's frustrating about that is it's like when you're doing shopping for your home, and you get one of those periodicals that comes on with the Sunday paper in the mail or whatever, and they're advertising all these things to you, and you're looking at the list of things that they've advertised, and you're like, well, there's one or two or three things on here that I care about, and the rest of it is kind of not really. I don't buy these things, so why are they, and they're pushing all these different things, but they don't know, so they're just doing these, kind of general purpose promotions that, for the most part, a lot of those just kind of fall on deaf ears. What's been working really well for a lot of companies lately is, as they put together a better process for that, there's automation that they can do that will actually allow them to message very specific offers to their customers based on the things that their customers actually care about. So, it's like if you use one of those apps to do your grocery shopping that's really popular today, you can go on there and it'll just tell you, these are the things that you care about, that you order all the time, right? So if we're going to reach out to our customer either over the phone or over email, what do we want to share with them? The stuff they care about or the stuff we were guessing at? And we don't want that to be a frustrating experience. We want to reduce the barrier for them and make them feel like we know them, which adds another layer, of the thing I like about that a lot is, as you get that email from that company you're doing business with, and it's all full of stuff that you like, you're like, wow, these guys know me. This is awesome. And when they call you and they say, hey, just checking in, everything going okay, and hey, I noticed that this product that you've been buying from me is on promotion right now. Actually, gosh, it looks like you're due for that. Actually, if you have this kind of information about your customer, then it makes you sound like a rock star, and it makes that relationship with the customer that much stronger. And these guys are busy; they don't want to talk on the phone necessarily. So, do you want them to pick up the phone and take your call? Because they know who's calling these days, right? So, do you want them dodging your call, or do you want them? If you're an advocate for their success and they know that, they're happy to take the call.
Right. As as someone who might be going to visit a customer and having that conversation, asking them, hey, by the way, did you see that we have these products that are on promotion, and you're asking about the marketing efforts, just try to get some feedback. The worst thing that the last thing that you want to hear is the customer saying, oh, I unsubscribed to that a long time ago. I never got anything of value out of that. Right. So making sure that you're in alignment is so important. And there's actually a statistic that's kind of mind blowing. I mean, you might not think that there's, that you're losing a lot of revenue because these teams aren't aligned. But, there's some statistics out there that will talk about how B2B organizations specifically are losing approximately 10 to 20% of their annual revenue because these teams aren't aligned and they have poor processes and inefficiencies.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, it's funny. I like to use the grocery store analogy a lot. It's the difference between having a list when you go to the store or kind of just shopping the shelves. Think about that even as a general customer, that there's a whole bunch of stuff that you buy on a regular basis. And if you walk in that store without your list, you're thinking to yourself, I did it again. I didn't bring my list, or, what am I doing? And you start just kind of browsing the shelves, trying to figure it out. And not only, sometimes you end up with a bunch of other stuff you didn't intend on getting, but you inevitably, you will forget 5 things or 10 things off the list. And then you're going to get back home and you're going to talk to the family, and you're probably going to get chewed out for missing those things. But if you're in business and the people that you're buying from don't know what you buy and they can't suggest those things to you, then you're counting on them keeping track of the list for you. So your
Right.
business is at their stake. Like you're thinking that they've got some exceptional system on their side that's going to help them understand exactly what to order at the right time. But if you're a better advocate for them and essentially saying to them, hey, did you know that you've been buying? There's this product you've been buying from me every week, and it looks like you're due for this. It looks like you're due for that. Hey, it's been a while since you've ordered this from me. If you don't have this kind of information, then it's a guessing game, and you're going to lose. One funny story we heard was, this product that a company was buying, and the company was hugely successful and profitable on this one product, and all of a sudden the sales for that product died, and they're trying to figure out what happened. Why did this product, who was buying this product? They started running reports, and they figured out that a couple of key accounts stopped buying this product because there was a competitor that came on the scenes and undercut them by like $5. And it was something super trivial, and they never would have found it had it not been for the reporting, but they found it still like 6-8 weeks too late. They should have had this, fresh in front of them, and they could have had the conversation, hey, why did you stop buying this product from me? Oh, $5? I mean, let's figure this thing out here, So the information is critical because it's being a good steward and helping your customer achieve success, and at the same time, you're keeping every SKU that you can. You're keeping that SKU count high, and you're trying to grow the book of business with every customer that way.
Right. While you're on the topic, let's round this one out because I think a really important question to cover, something to tackle here is talking about in the different stages where you might be. What are the best ways for you to monitor and assess risk from at a customer level and also from maybe a single SKU or product category level?
Okay, so this is I'm glad you asked this question because all the time we get where somebody is saying, hey, we'll ask the question, hey, how you guys know a little bit about your profitability? Do you know a little bit about your customers and how healthy they are or how healthy the product line is? And they'll say, well, we have, we know what our margins are, and so they kind of know what their margins are over time, and they run a report. The main type of reporting that we see that's being done right now is somebody will run total sales, total profitability. If they can get it into a group of customers or group of products, that's above average because we don't find that,
that's
typically
advanced.
Exactly.
I
We see that,
that's
you
advanced.
pull it, I dump it
Right.
into a spreadsheet, I run a pivot table, I got my sales and my GP, and yep. I see I'm hitting my 15% or I'm hitting my 25% margin that I was expecting, and everything from there is good. And I'm saying, well, okay, but are there some products that, we shouldn't be selling? Are there some customers that we shouldn't be selling to? Do we know where we're having success, where we're having some challenges? And they'll say things like, well, I mean, it's right there in the numbers. The margin's still good. And if the margin's tapering up or down, they don't really starting to kind of challenge, what type of information they should be reporting on or they should be seeing. And so as it relates to risks, this is the part that's more interesting because one thing you want to do is you want to copy success. So if you're seeing success, you want to be able to reproduce the success. But if you're seeing challenges, like one example would be a customer that's on a negative trend. And this could be like an immediate negative trend. They just kind of stopped buying, or they're starting to trend down their buying. Or they've been trending down. Sometimes they trend down on a trickle for a while and you wouldn't notice it. So you've got to be able to analyze and understand your data and what it's telling you about the trend at the customer sales level and at the profitability level, because you want to be able to understand, is this specific customer profitable? Are you getting the right number of sales, based on the average for that type of customer? And understand, the penetration that you're getting into that customer. But the same thing from the product standpoint. Are you having products that are not moving, or what we call like a slow moving product? Are you having product that's gonna, a lot of the products that our customers sell are going to expire, and then they're going to expire on the shelf because they haven't figured that out in time. So there's a lot of potential risk out there as it relates to selling to customers that are kind of bleeding you dry. They're constantly cherry picking the sales and the specials, and your margins are terrible on those accounts. Or people who are constantly choosing kind of like what we call the white milk specials, everything that's the only thing that we do with them we lose money on. Or products, that entire product categories where we lose money because we just haven't figured out how to price it effectively, or how to move that product. So these are things that are very, very obvious and present in the data, but without going and looking for them in very specific ways, you wouldn't notice. One thing that I find to be really challenging, though, is that there's this difference between who knows the information and who's doing the job to be able to solve some of those problems. Your typical salesperson does not have the advanced spreadsheet knowledge of being able to get in there and dump reports and pull up, we hear this all the time. Oh, we have a reporting platform that we offer, to our reps or to our customer or, to our stakeholders. And then we'll say, okay, well, where's this report live? How do they access it? How long does it take to pull? And we find, this report might take, 5-10 minutes to pull on a per customer basis,
Yeah.
but they're expected to be making, 30, 40, 50 calls a day or multiple visits per day. There's no way to get on top
has
of it.
access to the ERP, right?
Yeah, and it's like
So all the data's there.
yes, and that's the part that's so funny about it. It's like, well, we have reports, but you haven't put the reports or the process of running that report adjacent to where that work is being done by the sales rep, and so they're not doing it. They're
Yes.
expected to make calls and build relationships, and they're expected to be a savant, and this information just to flow, and
Right.
they're supposed to know everything and be the oracle.
Right.
It's impossible. You've got to find a way to get this data to be served up at the same time that they go to make that phone call, and it's got to be, a click away as opposed to fiddling around with things.
Right. Time is money. And especially when you have, you just mentioned the number of phone calls that some of these, some of these sales teams are making on a daily basis. So it's kind of the, you have this challenge and this dilemma of, okay, how fast I need to move quickly. So speed is of the essence, but quality of conversation and being prepared is on the other side. And you're kind of fighting this battle of, all right, am I keeping up from a speed perspective, or do I have the data and the quality there on the other side to make sure that I'm having better conversations? And I think a lot of times right now you have teams that are, they're forced to make a decision one way or the other. It's either, all right, I'm going to focus on quality over here, and I'm going to have to take the time to pull all the data and make sure I understand what it is that I'm going to talk to this customer about before I get on this call or before I go on my visit. Or, I'm just going to pack as many in as I can, and I'm going to get lucky, and I'm going to find people that are ready to order and ready to buy today. I'm probably not upselling that person either.
Right.
I'm probably just
What would you
calling
upsell them if you
and
don't
I'm just
know, right?
I have no idea what it is what they buy, or what even I could pitch them. I'm calling and saying, "Hey, John, you need an order this week?" No, okay, next. So it's speed or quality. So that kind of leads into the question of how do you give your teams easy access to this data so that they feel prepared and they're able to put the time in to actually have a good understanding of what they should be talking to a customer about, whether they're calling or going to visit, and being able to prepare a list of products that they should be pitching or something that might be new, right?
Yeah.
That they think that can bring value.
The key that we find that and we preach this, with our own software and with some of the solutions that we work with our customers on, is you've got to get that data as close to where it's going to be used as possible. So if I'm in there, let's say I'm in there as a salesperson or a sales manager, and I'm looking at an account and I'm trying to understand what's going on with it, right there somewhere on that screen or a click away has got to be this information that we're looking for. What are they buying from me? And I'm not talking about an order history list. Like you can go on with any e-commerce tool and pull up, I ordered, 5 times in the last year, and I have to drill
Right.
into each of the
Right.
orders to see how many.
You mean
no, I mean like
the
a summary.
order of 300 lines isn't helpful? for
Exactly.
me to
Some of
look
these
at?
customers are buying hundreds of lines, and multiple times per week. It's like, okay, I
Right.
need to understand what are they buying from me in a summarized fashion? What kind of volume am I doing over time? How are those things trending? What's my pricing? If I have to go line by line to figure that stuff out, or order by order to figure that stuff out, which is what most systems ship with, that job is very, very frustrating. And because it's frustrating, guess what? It doesn't happen. Okay.
Right.
The only thing I'm going to do if I have access to something like that is maybe open up 1 or 2 of those most recent orders. And I have a ballpark of what I'm looking for, but it's certainly not any kind of methodical, go through this list or check and balance anything. None of that is there. So especially when you're selling a lot of product to each individual account, you need to have a way to go in there and identify that and have that be present and teed up for you. And if it's not, just expect that the sales team, in the absence of that information, you would think that they're going to go pull whatever report that they need and figure that out. They don't have time for that. It's not because they don't want to. It's not because they don't want that to be a quality call, and it's not because they're not smart. They can be extremely intelligent, but they can't afford the extra 2 or 3 or 5 minutes on every call to get that information. They need to be able to reach out to twice as many people because they know it's a numbers game already. So,
well, they also run into situations where a customer might ask them for information while they're on the call. If they can't pull that information quickly while being on the call, then turns into a crapshoot on whether or not you're going to even be able to get back to this person in time, potentially before they order from somebody else.
One of the things I really like to see too is when they take that system and then they can tee up the suggestions. They can tee up the risks. They can tee up my previously purchased. They can tee up everything that I want to know about this customer. If you're in distribution, you're selling things, you're selling products and services. What are you selling? You're selling a recurring product, then I should know about that. I should know about the history of it, and I should know what they need to buy and what's likely to be purchased next. Give me something to talk about now that I got to get on this phone, right? Or give me something to email about. Give me something to stop in and have a chat about. I need, if I'm an inside salesperson on the phone, I want to know exactly what I'm going to be, to pick up that phone and do. And if I'm going to see that customer, what are some of the challenges I can be talking about? These things, I can't be hunting for this, right? Or I could, but then I can only handle maybe half as many accounts. And so that's the quandary that you're in. And kind of in that journey from kind of the early stage companies to the more mature companies, what we see is those early stage companies are doing is, because nothing is repeatable and nothing is automated or integrated, and there's this perception that sort of thing is very expensive, or that the systems are really challenging. And so as a side effect of that, though, they've hired twice as many people as what some of the companies that have those things figured out have done, because their people are extremely inefficient. So they've they've gotten to the point where they've got 5, 10, 15 reps, and they're not seeing where it makes any more sense to add a 16th or a 17th, because it's like diminishing returns. You hire, it's like crabs in a bucket. I put one more crab in there, and now they're all killing each other. I'm not getting anything of value out of this, right? If I don't have the right systems in place, it reduces my ability to scale. But if I can put those things in place, now I've got the ability to scale in droves. I can take my existing team that was already covering, let's say, a certain number of accounts and leads, and I can double their throughput. And it costs no more extra time out of them. They don't have to work more hours in their shift. They're just more effective. They're better at their jobs because of what was teed up in front of them, because of the knowledge that we're able to give them.
Right. If they receive direction, right, then they can use their time focusing on spending time with customers that are ready to order, right? Not customers that just placed an order yesterday, that they're likely not going to place for maybe a week, maybe it's a month, right? So understanding who's ready to buy, understanding who might have missed a couple order cycles with you, right? So again, back to that risk. So the direction is really, really important. And that's what that we hear a lot of sales teams, and it's managers and it's salespeople that are both asking for these types of tools and saying, how do we get better direction with our day? I know we all have the same amount of time in a day, but the person with the right direction is going to achieve much more.
Right. So with that in mind, we've covered a lot of different topics, and we've kind of talked a little bit about, maybe what it looks like when you're in the early stages, maybe what the mid stages looks like in the later stages. But we find that, customers, especially when they're coming to us and they're asking questions about what they should be doing, what kind of a system should they implement at which stage, there's always this struggle of, what box am I in right now? And then how do I get from where I am to where I want to go, right? So if that sounds like you, we've got this really awesome questionnaire that we've just launched on our website. Go ahead and share a link to that here for you. I want you to go ahead and take that questionnaire. What that's going to essentially do is it allows you to measure where you're at with several of these key areas that we see that are so kind of the common touch points that we see are kind of a measure of where you are in that journey and what some of the pain points might be or what some of the obstacles might be. You'll be able to see really quickly where you have your strengths, where you've got your weaknesses, and then at the end it'll give you kind of a summary of, based on the things that you've filled out, where you stack up, how you stack up amongst your peers, And then it will really help you understand, okay, if I'm at this stage and I want to go to this stage, what are the next steps for me? And it'll be a series of questions for you to be able to answer that help you kind of start thinking about what are some of those things that you need to be putting in place to get from where kind of you are now to where you want to go. So we've been covering a lot of topics around, kind of how you can rate yourself as a company from early stage to middle to ending stage companies, and kind of some of the things that we see that early stage companies are doing versus the more mature companies. Really appreciate you guys joining us. If you're interested in these kind of topics, we love to share information about this. We do a lot of teaching here. We do a lot of consulting, and we really want to help our customers to achieve success. We work with a lot of customers, kind of big and small, along the journey that they're on, helping them to understand which systems they need, where this kind of stuff fits into the life cycle that they're already on, and what they can do to go from kind of where they are right now to where they want to be. So, Ryan, anything else to add?
Yeah, if you want to take this assessment or go through this survey, you can find it on the website, www.supplymover.com. It'll also be in the resources tab, in the show notes, once this thing goes live. And what we would love to do is you're actually going to get results. So once you submit your survey, you will get results. You're going to get recommendations, and we'd love to follow up with you if you have any questions on anything that we provided, on any of the recommendations that are listed there, and we'd be happy to help kind of consult and help you understand current state, where you're at, and maybe where you can go in the future. So thanks for joining us today. Again, I'm Ryan. This is Chris. We love doing this. We really enjoy putting out content like this and talking about these types of topics. Sales process and technology are two things that we're very fond of here in our building, and something that we put a lot of time into, and that we're constantly learning more from our customers and from people probably like you and that are just calling in and have a lot of questions and are telling us about their business and different challenges that they're trying to overcome. So hope that you got a lot of value out of this today, and you should tune in more. We'll be putting more of this out here soon. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone.